Alright, so the basic idea behind any CAD is it's really a problem-solving tool where you go from the vague concept that you have in your head of what you think the part you're designing or the model you're designing should look like, and then translating that to something with actual dimensions in a way that can actually be used to construct whatever you are designing. From there, it starts with having the general idea of the three-dimensional concept that you want to create in your head, but you can't just directly import that three-dimensional object into CAD. You need to start with creating a sketch. Everything in CAD starts with creating a sketch. And with that, you need to have a two-dimensional representation of whatever your three-dimensional model is, and then you need to be able to translate that two-dimensional representation into the three-dimensional object that you have. So in Autodesk, which is Autodesk Inventor, that's what we're going to be learning tonight. To start creating a sketch whenever you enter the program, you go to the Create 2D Sketch button in the top of the 3D model program there, and then you just click it. What it'll do here is it'll bring up your three planes on your origin, your X plane, your Y plane, and your Z plane. Whatever the first sketch for the part that you make, it goes on whichever plane you select from there. It's really arbitrary which plane you select. So from there, it takes your CAD and puts it into a two-dimensional view. And that's where you can start creating the sketch using the various sketch tools that you have, such as the line, circle, arc, and rectangle. The ones that you'll use most often are the line and circle, because just about any other shape that you need to make can be derived from those two shapes. So starting with the basic structure, you can click the circle tool, and then when you click on any feature of the CAD, that first click will be the center point of your circle. And then from there, you can drag it out to whatever dimension you want. You can manually enter the dimension right away because you see the number is highlighted there. So let's say that this is 0.5, and it'll create a circle of that dimension. Now, one of the most useful things in Autodesk is your right click. You can enter a number of smaller submenus from the right click button. Generally, the easiest way of doing it is whenever you want to clear what tool you're using. So if you hold the right click and then drag over to whatever of these options you want to go to, you can cancel the tool that you're using right away just by right-clicking and dragging to the cancel button. Another useful feature of that right-click button is from there you can enter directly into your dimension tool, which you can use to set the sizes for every feature that you're using. So let's say you wanted to change this circle to 0.75. You would click it with your dimension tool, and then you click any arbitrary point, and once CAD loads, you can enter that dimension. Here it already exists because I already defined it. So with the dimension tool, you can just click back on the dimension that was there and enter a new dimension. And that'll automatically resize the structure that you're working with. So that's pretty straightforward how to make a circle from there. And that's your two-dimensional representation. From there, you can go to a number of three-dimensional structures. You can create a sphere, you can create a donut, you can create a cylinder. And a lot of the creativity comes in from taking that two-dimensional sketch and knowing how to transform it into whatever three-dimensional object you want to use. So click the Finish Sketch button in the upper right-hand corner, and that'll take it out of your sketch mode and bring it back into the three-dimensional view. And then from here, you have a number of different tools that you can use to create three-dimensional structures. Most of the time, you'll use these two tools, Extrude and Revolve. What Extrude does is if you click on any two-dimensional sketch, such as the only one that exists here, the circle, it'll take it and it'll stretch it out to however long you set it to. Right now it's set to 1 inch. So if you hit enter, you can create that. There are a number of other tools associated with that that'll go into depth in my other tutorials, but that's a basic extrusion. Now, when you're in the 3D mode, a lot of people struggle just with navigating. A couple quick tips to navigate is if you have a mouse, by pressing in the mouse wheel or whatever your middle mouse button is and holding it, you actually create a drag tool. So you can drag around whatever object you're looking at. Additionally, if you press the shift button, hold the shift button, press your middle mouse button, you enter a three-dimensional rotation. So from there you can rotate whatever structure you're looking at. If you can get the hang of that, it's significantly easier to use than going to the sidebar and clicking the drag tool, clicking the rotate tool, clicking the zoom tool, then. So people who have Autodesk, can you guys try to make just a circle, set a dimension to whatever you want on there, and then extrude it to however long you like? So now this is a part file. This is one part that you have. Obviously, when you create your models, you don't want to do it all in one part. People go crazy and they try to do everything all in one part, and that gets really annoying because you can't change individual features and it gets overly complex. When you create models, what it is you make a number of smaller three-dimensional parts like this. They're normally simple things. They're unibody pieces. For example, when CADing the robot, a nut would be one part, a bolt would be one part, a single piece of aluminum would be one part. And that's in addition to simplicity in the CAD, it also makes it easier when it comes to machining whatever parts you're creating, so that you can isolate just that one part and know that you need to create just that one part.
If you can take it apart in real life, would you take it apart in parts in the CAD?
Yeah. Alright, so to create a new part, there are a couple ways of doing this. The easiest way of doing it is going in the upper right-hand corner here, where there's a drop-down menu, upper left-hand corner, and there are three separate there are four options here. Click Part, and that'll just open up a new part in here. So this is back to your default part. Now, what we're going to do here is we're actually going to create a hex bolt, or a hex nut. So create your 2D sketch, click on whatever surface you want to create your sketch on, and that brings you to the sketch window. Now, what we need to do to create a hex nut is we need to take an irregular geometric shape, a hexagon, which you don't see in your little toolbar up here, and we need to make a regular hexagon and then a circle on the inside, and then you're going to be extruding that in one dimension so that you have a three-dimensional hex nut. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to create a circle, and you're going to create the inner diameter of that. So click there, and then right-click, General Dimension, and dimension your circle to 0.5 or 0.25 because we're going to be making a quarter 20 bolt. And then what you actually want to do to create the hexagon, the easiest method of doing it is making another circle larger than the circle that you have. Say this one is 0.5. Now, what you can do from here is actually one of the most useful tools. When you go to extrude this as is, if you were to create a hexagon within the circle, you'd have three separate points of extrusion. You could either extrude this inner circle, the hexagon around it, or the little space around the outer circle, because it just looks for completely closed off shapes. So what you can do is you can actually right-click on this circle here, and that handy little button, Construction, will make it a dashed line. Now when you go to use your extrusion tool, it won't recognize that that circle exists. And when it comes to making closed shapes, it won't recognize that that circle is closing off the shape. So what you can use is you can use that circle as a reference point for dimensioning the other objects without having to worry about what the circle does to your final extrusion. Now, because we know we're making a regular hexagon, we know that each of the exterior points on that hexagon are going to be along that circle. So we can use that outer circle as a reference point for creating the lines in the hexagons. So you create a line, you click from one part of the circle to another part, and when you're doing this, don't worry about the dimensions as long as you know that you're clicking from the endpoints of one line to the next line. and it'll automatically close off that shape because when you click on the 2 points, it automatically snaps your mouse to points and creates a concentric constraint. So it basically closes off your shape whenever you have 2 lines joined together like that. So now those dimensions still aren't in a perfect hexagon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear out of my line tool, and then I'm going to go up to here. These are your geometric constraints. Now here's where there are a number of ways of doing this. For example, this constraint up here creates a horizontal line constraint. When you click on a line with that, it will be forced to be horizontal relative to your axis here. Up there is a parallel line constraint. So you can make these 2 lines parallel, those 2 lines parallel, and those 2 lines parallel, and that'll force it into the hexagon shape. Polygon is one way of doing it. I'm demonstrating the easiest way of doing this, I'd say, is using the equals tool. What this does is if you click on two of the same type of sketch elements, like 2 lines, it'll make their length equal to each other. So if you go and do it to each line in this hexagon, every single line in that hexagon will be the same length, therefore it'll be a regular hexagon. So go through and do that. So now you can see on my CAD, all of these lines are now green. For yours, they will probably be a darker blue. And you can look down in here. It says fully constrained. That means every single sketch. That means every element in the sketch is now fixed in its position because you set in these different constraints on it, so that they can't move or change dimensions. And that's good. The idea is you want to have all of your sketches to have that fully constrained tool underneath. Whenever something you think is constrained isn't constrained, the easiest way of figuring out why it's not constrained is just clicking on a point or a line or something that you think isn't constrained and dragging it and seeing what does. And generally when you drag it around like that, you can figure out what's not working